Dave Clawson coming off back-to-back 3-9 finishes at Wake Forest, looking for better things in 2016. We bring in Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC to help us break down the Demon Deacons. Mike, we'll start it with quarterback John Wolford, a guy that started as a freshman, took a beating behind a bad offensive line. Kendall Hinton is a kid that has gotten into the mix, provides a different look as a dual-threat quarterback. So let's start there with the offense.
Yeah, well, the offense has definitely been a struggle for Wake Forest. John Wolford, as you mentioned, got in as a freshman, took a beating, returned last year, still took a beating. He's a guy that completed 61% of his passes last year, had 9 touchdowns to only 11 interceptions. They kind of brought Kendall Hinton in at times, hoping that he would kind of provide an offensive spark, being the dual-threat guy that he is. The problem with Wake Forest is their offensive line has been so porous over the past 2 or 3 years, and really beyond that they really have struggled in the running game, averaged less than a yard a carry in the 2014 season, and was one of the worst rushing teams as far as yards per carry is concerned in the country last season in 2015. But Kendall Hinton is a guy that they brought kind of off the bench at the quarterback position who could change it up rushing the football. He was second on the team in rushing yards with 390. He also had 93 carries. So with 7 touchdowns was by far the team leader in that category. But the leading rusher for Wake Forest, he'll be returning this year, is Tyler Bell. He was a freshman last year. He's heading to a sophomore year this year, obviously. 129 carries for 451 yards, but only got in the end zone once. And that was kind of the story of the Wake Forest offense last year. They would have some decent production depending on what position you looked at, but then they couldn't punch the ball in the end zone, and that was a huge problem for them offensively for much of last season. At the receiving position, Cortez Lewis, he's a guy that's returning as well. He'll be a sophomore, had 47 catches last year, led the team in that category. He led the team in yards as well with 611, 13 yards a catch, was second on the team, and he was first on the team, or tied for first on the team, might I add, in touchdown receptions with 4 of them. Cam Serigne, obviously the tight end that Wake Forest loves to go to in their offense. He's the best player on their offense, in my opinion. 46 catches for 562 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. They need to try to get him the ball more. The problem is that most defenses are keying on him because they know he's one of the lone playmakers on that entire offense. So Wake Forest will be looking to some younger guys, namely at the running back position, Cade Carney. He's a true freshman who's out of the Virginia area, I believe. And he's a guy that can really make a difference there at running back potentially. He showed some spark in the spring game, a guy that really showed his athleticism, not only rushing the ball, but also receiving the ball out of the backfield. He can definitely make a difference in a team that's really been lacking playmakers. So Wake Forest, they're going to try to take the step forward on offense, whether it's Wolford or Kendall Hinton in the game. I'd expect to see them both, much like we did last year. And Wake Forest will just be trying to piece together one game at a time, an offense that can somehow rack up some yards and put up points, which really has been a struggle for them over the past couple of seasons.
So, Mike, just to put a little bit more emphasis on some of the numbers that you reviewed just a minute ago in terms of rushing the football, 127 out of 128 teams 2 years ago. You mentioned the 0.7 yards per carry. So look around college football, folks, and look at even marginal teams in Power 5 and Group of 5 play. And usually you've got a couple backs in the backfield that carry the ball and gain most of the carries that average typically 5.5, 6 yards per carry. Tyler Bell at 3.5 last year. Matt Colburn at 3.6 last year. And again, as a team, 3 flat. That was 127 out of 128, but that was a drastic improvement from 0.7 the year before. This is the 123rd ranked rushing offense, 114th total offense from last season. Wolford will be a little bit more dependable in the passing game. He's more accurate. You mentioned the 61% completion percentage. Kendall Hinton provides the 7 rushing touchdowns in that component in the rushing game, but 52% through the air. He's a bit more scattershot, a little less polished as a quarterback. I did think it was fairly impressive that in the passing game that they did, in addition to Serigne being the best target and the most dependable guy, and the most dynamic, that they spread it out amongst 5 guys in particular between 32 and 47 catches. And the bright spot here is that Tabari Hines at 32 catches, 3 touchdowns last year, and Cortez Lewis, as you mentioned, 47 catches, both freshmen coming off just their initial campaigns. So a lot of improvement possibly if they can get the push up front in the running game that's going to help the passing game. They've got some guys that could possibly make some plays on offense. The defense, considering all those 3 and outs, Mike, stood up pretty well at 39th in total defense and 49th in points against.
Yeah, it's a defense that really, for as many tough situations that the offense put the Deacons in last year, the defense actually was quite impressive. We saw a similar situation with Boston College as well, and the Wake Forest-Boston College game was just epically bad on offense, but the 2 defenses really did show up to play in that game, despite how abysmal the 2 offenses were. But there's a parallel drawn there between Wake Forest and Boston College, and that both teams have really struggled offensively, but defensively they've been pretty stout. The issue Wake Forest is going to have is they're losing their leader on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker Brandon Chubb. He's one of their leading tacklers from a year ago. He's moved on now to the NFL, and he was a guy that definitely made a difference on that side of the ball, so Wake Forest will definitely miss his presence. But linebacker Markel Lee is coming off of another great season for the Deacons. At linebacker, he's another guy that's going to have to slide right in and kind of pick up from where Brandon Chubb left off and continue his production. He was actually just recently voted a team captain, so his teammates think highly of him from a leadership perspective, and they hope that he can continue his stellar play on the field as well. Defensive end Wendell Dunn as well, another team captain, as voted by the teammates there at the end of spring. A guy that's definitely also made his impact felt, not only in the rushing defense role that he plays there on the outside for Wake Forest, but also rushing the passer, where he was stout a year ago in that regard as well. So Wake Forest still definitely has some playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, but losing Brandon Chubb is kind of going to be the storyline here. We're going to watch, and how Wake Forest will be able to replace him is going to go a long way to determining just how big of a step forward or a step back they take heading into the 2016 campaign.
And when we talk about defense, of course, the punting game goes right hand in hand with the defense. Mike, how could we forget Alex Canal, one of our favorite players in the ACC, the punter for Wake Forest, who it only took about 3 games deep into the 2015 season to highlight this is how much this kid has punted in his career to eclipse the all-time college football record for number of punts in a career. Look him up. He's punted almost 100 times a season. He had a season with 94 punts. He moves on, so they're going to have to replace him. And all kidding aside, he definitely was a weapon and one of the better ones across the country. You highlight what the defense was able to do, even when they were worn out in the fourth quarter from being on the field constantly. Probably the missing component here in this defense is not a whole lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. Didn't turn over the offense much, only had 6 interceptions as a team, not a whole lot of plays in the backfield. You mentioned the loss of Brandon Chubb and his 94 tackles. Duke Ejiofor with 4.5 sacks. That led the team, 4.5 sacks. Markel Lee, you mentioned his place as a captain. He comes into a senior season, last 2 seasons with 21 tackles for loss total. Wendell Dean with 8 tackles for loss as well. They really need those guys that have been consistent players to be more dynamic players and make plays that are going to change drives and get offenses behind the stick. So Dave Clawson trying to improve from 3-9 and 3-9, and it's about at that point that Wake fans need to see some improvement, Mike.
Yeah, definitely. Rushing the passer, like we mentioned, was definitely an Achilles heel for them last year as far as getting home to the quarterback. We know that they were able to put some pressure on opposing quarterbacks in ACC play, but getting home, making those game-changing sacks, those plays where the quarterback's under pressure and they turn the football over, maybe force a couple of throws that they would not have otherwise. That's something that Wake Forest will continue to try to improve on if they want to turn teams over more and put their offense in more favorable positions to succeed. We know the defense was solid for the most part last year, but the offense taking a step forward is going to be paramount to the defense continuing their momentum here heading into the 2016 season.
So just a reminder that we're breaking down each team at the culmination of spring practice and also looking ahead toward August camp, setting you up with positional breakdowns for every team in the ACC. So for Mike McDaniel from Inside the ACC, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.